Amen. Well, how's everybody's Thanksgiving? Good Thanksgiving? Good. Listen, I have another friend here today, Mac McElrath, good friend of mine, is here visiting with us, so it's good to have you, Mac. Let's hear it for Mac. Appreciate being here in a minute. Jamie's going to come up and we're going to share a little bit. I just want to talk about Thanksgiving for a minute. How many of you have a tradition where you kind of sit around your table, Thanksgiving, and everybody maybe says something they're thankful for? You guys do that? Anybody do that? I was recently at a Baldwin Whitehall borough kind of meeting, right, Mac? And before they start the meeting, that's what they do. They go around, they introduce themselves, you know, where they're from, what they're doing, and then something they're thankful for. And boy, it was really just this kind of a special time, you know, and I think it's important for us to, you know, Thanksgiving, we kind of use that time, don't we, to think about that, think about giving thanks. At least we should, right? But what I want us to understand is that the feeling of gratitude or thanks is something that's so important for all of us. Listen, the Bible says this, 1 Thessalonians, it says, give thanks in all circumstances. So, now that's the English word all, but in the Greek, you know what that word all means? It just means all. It means all circumstances, right? So, give thanks in all circumstances. You might say, yeah, but there are some circumstances. How can I give thanks in? Well, that's the key, isn't it? Learning how to see the good in everything. I was telling the story the other day, actually to Jamie, about the Chinese farmer, right? About how whenever he was plowing his field, he put his horse away. That night his horse ran away. And all his neighbors said, oh, what bad luck you have. And he said, well, maybe good, maybe bad, I don't know. And then the horse came back with 3 other wild horses. And they said, what good luck you have. He said, maybe good, maybe bad. And his son was trying to break one of the horses and flew off and broke his arm. They said, oh, what bad luck you have. So it goes on and on. The point is this. The point is when something happens to us, we don't know whether it's good news or bad news, do we? Right? Isn't that true? I'm sure you can look back in your own life and look at circumstances, things that happen, and thought at the time this wasn't a good thing, but you realize, wow. How many of you have ever thanked God for the breakup of somebody a long time ago that you're glad you aren't with now? Oh, really? I thought it'd be more of us than that, right? Yeah, I mean, and so we don't know. And so Paul says this, be thankful in all circumstances. And then he says this, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. So many people come to me and they say, you know, I don't know what God's will is for me, but over and over again in the Bible, it says things like this is the will of God. And it's not things like what you should do for a living or what house you should buy or like the things like that, right? That had nothing to do with the will of God. But things like this, giving thanks, that's God's will for you to learn to be that kind of person. Now, isn't it true it's hard to give thanks when you're proud and when you're arrogant, maybe you're discontented, you're anxious, you're focused on negative things, you're jealous or envious of others, you're holding on to anger and bitterness. That's hard to be thankful when you're having all those sorts of things, right? But do you know the opposite is also true? When you're thankful, when you're grateful, when you're living that kind of life, those other attitudes and emotions, they're actually hard to have when you're expressing gratitude. Listen to this. Psychologists find that over time, feeling grateful boosts happiness and fosters both physical and psychological health. Now, the psychological you may understand, but do you know it boosts your physical health as well? Even among those already struggling with mental health problems, studies show that practicing gratitude curbs the use of words expressing negative emotion and shifts inner attention away from such negative emotions as resentment, envy, minimizing the possibility of ruminating. Right? You all know what ruminating is. That's what a cow does. He has multiple stomachs, and a cow digests something, brings it back up and chews it. That's called ruminating. Swallows it again, brings it back up. And so we have a tendency to do that, don't we? On negative things. We ruminate. We keep bringing it up over and over and over again. And having gratitude, expressing thankfulness in your life is a way to overcome those. And even things like depression. So people who are grateful, listen to this, people who are grateful feel less pain. Now this is like scientific study. I'm not making this stuff up. People who are grateful feel less pain, less stress, suffer insomnia less, have stronger immune systems. Who wants a stronger immune system? I want as strong an immune system I could get. Stronger immune system, experience healthier relationships, and do better academically and professionally. Overall, it boosts your mental health and your physical health. Giving gratitude, the simple act of giving gratitude. So how can we do that? Well, one of the things we can do, as we talked about before, is just be conscious of that and maybe make a gratitude journal. I don't know if anybody journals. Write things in there you're grateful for. But another thing that you can do, Carl, you're going to help me. Carl's going to pass out Carl and Maria, going to pass out some cards. And they are simply a blank, it's an envelope with a blank card inside. What I want you to do is right now I want you to think of somebody that you would like to express appreciation to. So think about it. You would like to thank somebody. Express your appreciation, your gratitude for them for whatever reason. Maybe it's someone in your house, maybe it's not, maybe it's a relative, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a pastor. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know if you're thankful for anybody. But I want you to think of that person, okay? What I'd like you to do actually is, if you have a pen on you, I'd like you to pull out that paper, the inside, and right now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write their name on the paper. You don't have to go ahead and write the thank you note right now, but I want you to write their name on the paper. And I want you during this, today, maybe not during the message, but today I want you to think about that person. Think about how you might express gratitude, how you might express your appreciation to them. So this is really a simple thing, isn't it? It's a really simple thing. Maybe you'll do this. Maybe you'll say, you know what? I'm going to spend just maybe 30 seconds, right? 30 seconds out of your life, and pray for them. Pray for them. Pray for them. Wish well for them. And maybe you write that in your note. I want you to know, I was thinking about you today, and I prayed for you today. How would you feel if in the mail, right, you open up the mailbox, and there was a card there, handwritten, right? No label, handwritten. You opened it up, and someone in there was saying, I was thinking about you. Isn't that a great feeling? So, but I want you, for your side of it, to learn to express that. Because listen, we hear all the benefits of expressing gratitude and being thankful. And friends, here's what I want you to know. All these things in our life that we've been talking about in change, and Jamie's going to come up here in a minute, all these things are choices that we make. Isn't that true? They're choices that we make. You can make a choice to be negative. You can make a choice to be positive. You can make a choice to be selfish, or you can make a choice to be generous. And so, Jamie, why don't you come on up here? Jamie's going to join me today, and we're going to be kind of wrapping up our change series. But let me just ask you, Jamie's coming up here. Make sure your mic's on there, Jamie. Let's get a hand for Jamie. Thanks, buddy. I gave Jamie a stool that's lower than mine, so I can be above you, Jamie. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, listen. I've been thinking about this for a while, about this whole idea of change. And is it on? You good? Thanks. Yeah, good. No. Yeah, this whole idea of change. So this idea of our, you can slide it right in your pocket, Jamie. Right in the side of your pocket, right there. Yeah, there you go. This whole idea of Jamie and I talk a lot about this, about how our subconscious mind controls so much of what we do, and we're not really aware of it, and how a lot of negative programming that we've got throughout our life leads to a lot of our behavior in life, right? And so the point is this, is that our brain is super efficient, and it takes things that we always do and it puts them into the subconscious, and then we end up living kind of on autopilot, right? And so our brain actually works against us. But I was thinking about it last night. I was laying in bed. I was thinking about it. Think about it like this, because people say different things about it. I think of it almost like a superpower. What I mean by that is this. How many remember when Superman, in one of the shows, Superman turned bad for a while? You remember that? Okay, so he has all these powers, all this strength, and he used them for negative reasons, like just evil sort of thing, right? Kind of against himself and against people, right? And when his superpowers, when he uses them for good, doesn't he? But for good, he never uses them. How many of you have ever played the game when you were young, where you talk about if you could have a superpower, what superpower would it be, right? And so, and when I was young and we used to do that, it was always because we wanted to use that superpower for what reason? Selfish reasons, right? Use that superpower for our own gain. Now here's the thing about the Bible. The Bible's pretty clear about things like that. The Bible's pretty clear about considering others before yourself, right? And we'll talk about this in a minute a little bit, about selflessness rather than selfishness. And so this whole idea of change and becoming a different person is becoming the best version of ourselves that we can be. And what I contend is that best version of ourselves is found in God's Word, right? Is found in, being like how Jesus demonstrated life to be, putting others before ourselves, right? So that's what this series has all been about. Now, so Jamie, I met Jamie, how long have we met now? About
3 or 4 months?
I think it's longer than that, isn't it? How long, Mac? It's probably been 8 months or something. I don't know. When did you join?
February.
February? Yeah. I met you shortly thereafter. Okay, so yeah. So we've been friends for a while, and we get together every Wednesday night, and we, Mac and Jamie call it Bible study, Wednesday night. You're welcome to join us if you want to. Actually, the men are welcome to join us. It's no women are allowed in there, are they? That's not a good thing. Anyways. Yeah. So we call it kind of Bible study. We talk about all different kind of stuff. And Jamie and I have a lot of conversations, especially over this series of change. Jamie is a neuropsychologist, right? So in a minute, I'm going to give him an opportunity to share a little bit about what that is, right? There's neurology, and then there's psychology, and he's anyways, he'll talk about that in a minute. And so we spent a lot of time talking about things, so they call it our Bible study. So we thought together, it would be great if we could have a conversation like that we have on Wednesdays right here. And so that's what we're going to do today, if that's okay. All right? So Jamie, why don't you talk a little bit introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do.
I'm Jamie Petrick. I sell Chevys for a living.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sorry. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist. I tell my patients that is a fancy name for head doctor, but I say it half kiddingly in that I work with folks who have medical problems specific to the central nervous system, that being the brain and the spinal cord. So I do mostly medical stuff. I see people, no one wants to see me, because if you're seeing me, there's something wrong. Not just psychologically, but usually medically. So I do a lot of cancer work, I do a lot of diagnostic work with respect to different neurological conditions. So I spent the majority of my career in hospitals, seeing relatively normal human beings who have had something bad happen to them. So a lot of neurosurgery, neurology, psychiatry, believe it or not, urology, nephrology, just about anything you can think of that involves the body. Occasionally I see someone that has some psychological problems.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because, dealing with the brain, all these subjects that we've been talking about come up. So when we are on Wednesday nights and we're talking about things, Jamie inevitably will have a story or a situation that, kind of related to that. And I thought, well, how great would that be to take it to see how we, well, one of the things I talked to Jamie about is this integration with faith and the sciences, how important that is, right? Because when we have these polar opposites, you have faith on this side, you have science over here, and then people end up really rejecting the other for really kind of wrong reasons, right? So you see someone who is maybe in the field of science and okay, got it? Yeah. Is it still on? All right. So may write off anything that has to do with the sciences because of, maybe the person or something like that, right? And there's these just the opposite. And we see that so much today. So I thought we'd just kind of talk about a few things here. So Jamie talked a little bit about what he does, what neuropsychology is. So one of the scriptures, Jamie, that we've been using as sort of a launching pad is this idea of as a man thinks, so he is. We joked about
Descartes.
Descartes. Yeah, Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Right? And Jamie had a. Why don't you tell them your joke?
Well, there was a. I'm getting that.
Now you're on. You're good.
Okay. So Rene Descartes was a modern philosopher who said, "I think, therefore I am." That's how he postulated his existence. Well, does everyone know how he died? No. Well, Rene was in an English pub, and the bartender said, "Rene, may I get you a pint?" And Rene said, "I think not." And poof, he disappeared. Sorry.
So let's talk about that for a
We
minute.
could just tell jokes. I like that. Forget the neuroscience stuff.
Connie laughed. Yeah.
Connie will laugh at anything.
Yeah, she'll laugh at
She's
me.
married to Pete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. A little bit about the importance of, our thoughts and how we see ourselves, right? Because you deal with people with brain injuries, but not just brain. I was really fascinated when we're talking about that case where that young boy shot somebody, and we're discussing everything around that, and you said, he's got to live with that for the rest of his life. Right? Jamie deals with police officers that have shooting in the line of duty and things like that about how the importance of how you see yourself, even, right?
Right. Well, let me give you a real quick neuroanatomy lesson. So the human brain is unlike any other animal brain because we have this thing up here called a frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe takes up about 33% of the entire brain volume of the human being. And then back here we have parietal lobes, temporal lobes, occipital lobes, and there's this little doodad tucked underneath there called the cerebellum that's responsible for balance. But the frontal lobe is very unique because it allows us a sense of awareness. It allows me the opportunity to think about what I'm thinking, which is a lot of what you've been talking about. Right. And I gathered that through our conversations at the club and also my visits here. So the frontal lobe is what makes humans uniquely human. And when a frontal lobe is injured, quite often my patient will lose awareness, and that's called anosognosia, lack of neurological awareness. So a real quick example is on a medical side, I'll see a little old lady who's had a stroke, and she's hemiparetic. And I see her in the hospital, she's in a wheelchair, and I go, "Oh, Mrs. Smith, that's a beautiful sweater." And Mrs. Smith looks up at me and she says, "There's nothing wrong with me, why can't I go home?" And I said, "Well, you had a stroke." And she said, "No, I didn't." I said, "You're paralyzed." "No, I'm not." And she's really mad because it won't let her go home. So that's lack of neurological awareness. And I think what we've talked about is that we often are not even aware of the decisions that we make. Mm-hmm. And that we talked about being a zombie. Yeah. And walking through life as a zombie, or automatic pilot are the words you used. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of how I interface with all of this. And I do see, we've talked about, occasionally I'll see a 45-year-old man in prison for life because he made a decision, maybe not even consciously, but he made a decision to shoot and kill somebody when he was 17. And that was a very bad decision. And then I see him in the prison, and it turns out he's a really nice guy. He's called a murderer, but he's just a person who made a very bad choice as a teenager. And then we talked about whether or not an 18-year-old brain is really an adult brain because of neuromaturation, or if it's still an adolescent. And that gets into sentencing guidelines. But anyway.
Let's pick up for a minute on that idea of, I talked about, we spend so much of our life on autopilot, right? Which is this great feature of our brain, right? Your brain takes these things that you learn, right? and you learn them, and they're in the front of your brain or in your conscious brain as you're learning them. Like I use the example of me learning how to drive a stick shift car. Right, it's in my my conscious brain. I'll give you a different example. Right now, I picked up my banjo again, and I'm learning how to play the banjo. Well, right now, my fingers aren't doing all the things. It's hard for me to get this hand to do one thing and this hand to do another thing, and so I just keep repeating it. And then I lay in bed at night, Jamie, and so there's this roll where you pluck the third string with your thumb, second string with your index finger, then a fifth string with your thumb, and your first string, anyway, it's called a roll. And so I sit there at night programming my hands by thinking about it, because remember I told you, the body doesn't know the difference between you actually doing it and you thinking about it, okay? So I'm actually practicing laying in bed doing that. And so what I was getting at is so much of our life we run on autopilot, right? And so I'm sure you see patients who can do things because they're, autopilot, but they're damaged up front, their prefrontal cortex. It's hard for them to learn new things. Right. So how is it? So this gets into a little bit of neuroplasticity, right? How do you see that working out in real life? Maybe you could tell the story about the redhead, that sort of thing, right? About our brain can actually be shaped, or the neurostructure can actually be regrown.
Yes. Yeah. Well, for years and years and years, we as a group of scientists would tell patients after they've been injured, whether it be their brain or their spinal cord. And that's the entire central nervous system, by the way. It's just your brain and your spinal cord. That's the central nervous system. And for years we would tell people, once you've injured central nervous system tissue, that's it. It does not regenerate, does not grow back. Some people here remember Christopher Reeves, the famous Superman.
Exactly.
How about that? Who suffered a neck spinal cord injury, and it turns out that we were lying to people. The central nervous system tissue does regenerate. The problem is it just grows so darn slowly. But we have this concept within the field of, it's called rerouting versus resprouting. And really what we want to do is to promote both. So can I tell the story about going to that conference in Arizona?
Please.
So I think this is back in 1996. I went to a conference in Arizona, and I went to a workshop taught by Dr. Brian Kolb, who was a neuroscientist who actually wrote he wrote my very first textbook. And Dr. Kolb presented research, and this is all rat research, about how to treat damaged brain with something called gonadotropin, or human growth hormone, and combining that with behavior therapy for a rat. And behavior therapy for a rat is just petting it. You're stimulating it. So what he found was that if you treat a damaged rat brain with gonadotropin with behavior therapy, petting it, it actually, at the end of the day, on autopsy, the rat brain will show greater dendritic regrowth. The dendrite's part of the nerve. So, long story short, it was a phenomenal conference, phenomenal workshop, and I end up later that day on an elevator with Dr. Kolb. And I said, Dr. Kolb, I attended your workshop. It was phenomenal. I can't believe you're growing brains. And he said, stand in line. That's a joke.
I know.
All right, never mind. That was a joke. But it's a real story.
It's Sunday morning. You still have to sleep, Jamie.
All right. Mac got it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will resprout neurons. The redhead that Jeff just talked about briefly, and I was just telling you this the other day. I had a patient years ago who was a beautiful young lady, 18 years old, on her way home from college for Thanksgiving, and was in a terrible accident and had really bad brain injury with something called diffuse axonal injury and punctate hemorrhages throughout her brain. And when I saw her, she's in a hospital bed and she's like this. She had decorticate posturing. And back then, we could keep a patient in the hospital for a long time. So she was in the hospital for 8, 9 months. And she finally went home. And I didn't see her until about 8 years later. I left the hospital where she was. And then about 8 years later, I came back to that hospital. And I'm walking down the hall. And approaching me is this young lady, attractive redhead. And our eyes meet. And it's her. It's Sierra. And if you would have asked me 8 years prior if I would have ever thought that she would be walking down the hall or talking, I would have said, there's no way. So I didn't have any faith. But she gave me faith.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't know something was wrong with her, I would have never have known something was wrong with her. And that's amazing.
Right.
To me, that's a miracle. Now, going back to your point about is it all science or is it all God? It doesn't have to be either or.
Right.
Why not the best of both worlds?
Right.
To me,
exactly.
that's
And my of course from my position, and anything that's truth is God anyways. Science is, if there's science is true, well, and science even for itself doesn't say, like you hear a lot on TV right now, like trust the science. There is no the science. There's science that's constantly changing and growing, and we're learning new things. Like Jamie said, how many years ago they would say, well, there's no chance you can regrow. Regrow is not the right word, but have a new brain. Whereas your neural structure can change. And so one of the aspects, Jamie, that I've been talking about is is learning the two concepts of pruning and sprouting. Pruning is the thing the Bible says. Tear down these strongholds that set themselves up against God. And what I take that to be is this. There are strongholds that we have in ourselves neurologically that tell us things about ourselves that don't line up with what God says is true about us. Or take somebody that has a phobia, right? Somebody has a phobia of insects, right? And they think a ladybug is going to kill them. Well, it's not logical, but it's entered into their subconscious mind. So subconscious mind is so much faster than your conscious mind that you can't do anything about it. So through a process, it's not doesn't happen overnight. And maybe you could even speak to this a little bit. Is learn how to prune, those things that are deep in our subconscious. A lot of times it's psychoanalysis, right? It happens that way. You can maybe go back to someone's at that point in time when when that phobia first entered into their world, and lead them out of it that way. And the thing that's exciting to me is that we can sprout new neurostructures, right? And that's how we can talk about a new brain, have a new brain. And I love that we're talking about the rats because what they saw is exactly that, right? When they looked at the rats' brains, is that the brains were, I guess, growing in that sense, right?
Growing.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about the pruning and sprouting aspect of, and then your work, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff just mentioned therapy. Everyone has heard of psychotherapy. The way I look at it as church is therapy.
Yeah.
And I'll just talk about me for a second. And I don't think just me, because we've all experienced at some point in time road rage, right? Someone cuts you off, and without even thinking, you immediately go to that son of a gun, right? And you want to chase them.
Right. Right.
That's automatic behavior. That's being a zombie. But if I come to church and someone cuts me off, I'm not so much prone to do that. And that to me is pruning that limbic that reflex to be emotional. Jeff and Mac and I and Pete, we often joke about this little structure in your brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is responsible, and this is a gross oversimplification, but it's responsible for rage. And the frontal lobe is responsible for inhibiting emotion. That's what alcohol does to people. It causes your frontal lobe to take a vacation, and you become disinhibited. So I think, going back to the point, that I think church is is
For Jamie?
therapeutic.
Your mic's not working.
Oh,
Take that
sorry.
off. Just use that one.
Sorry.
That's good.
Okay.
Keep going in and out.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
I can hear myself.
Just let it hang. Just let it hang. That's fine. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I mean, that's good. What I really want is, so a lot of times you come to church and you hear things and you go, well, who is this guy? Why is this guy talking about neuroscience, right? I'm not, no degree, but you have a lot of education, a lot of experience in this.
I pretend.
What's that?
I said I pretend.
Right.
Sorry.
And so there's another scripture, Jamie, that I've been really leaning heavily on. It says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Right. And so I think when you are seeing a patient who has an injury, a brain injury, right? I mean, in a sense, maybe I'm wrong. In a sense, what you're helping them do is get a renewed mind, or a new mind, even, right? That it's damaged there, and now we're learning in neuroscience that it's not the final word. That regrowth can happen.
Right.
Is there a process in that? Or?
Sure. It's reprogramming. If you consider your brain very much like a computer, it's the same thing. And I'll give you another extreme example. I had another patient, Joey, who had another terrible brain injury. His shirt got caught in a drill bit, and he was sort of sucked into the drill. We're talking a really big drill bit. He was sucked into the drill and had massive frontal lobe damage. And as a result of that, he had this paralysis on his, I believe, his left upper extremity. So they would cast it because it's hard to get through life like this. It's much easier to get through life like this, and it's really easy to get through life like this, as long as you have some flexibility. So they would do serial casting. And at some point in time, we would not let Joey use that arm. We wouldn't let him use his good arm. So if you restrict the use of the good arm and he's forced to use the bad arm, he gains functional use of that arm faster. And that's just basic physical therapy. But that's an example of physically manipulating this brain or computer.
Now, this question, I'm sure you can speak to it. It may not be in your wheelhouse, but so I was talking before about gratitude, right? So what do you think, just from your own work, about that, about fostering, developing in your own life? So you're saying rather than use this arm, I use this, forced to use this arm. If I consciously, make a choice and say, I'm not going to be negative. I'm going to find reasons to be thankful, right? Even though it seems, and a lot of times people say, well, it just seems kind of contrived. I'm not really thankful. I'm just saying that. But from my understanding, and maybe you can verify it, maybe not, is that even that is positive for your mental health, also for your physical health and emotional health.
Yes. Jeff likes it when I agree with him. I think even faking being thankful is therapeutic.
Yeah.
Laughter, even fake laugh, is therapeutic. Right?
Isn't that amazing?
That's right. It makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, clapping, like we clap after a hymn or a song or a great performance.
A good message,
a good message.
We'll see. Yeah, maybe
clapping is therapeutic because it stimulates brain structures,
right?
Specifically the limbic system.
So one of the things that I think you might have been here for this message was talking about noticing, right? Because you and I had this conversation. We go through so much of our life on autopilot, and we pass this. We go on the same roads every day. We pass the same things every day. We see the same people every day. We do this, and our life becomes on autopilot. And so there is this teaching, I guess you can call it, on mindfulness. about being active and seeing new things. So I ask you all to notice something new. That's when Gigi and Pat sent me the picture of the light that didn't work, right? They noticed something new. Anyways, my point is this, is that the benefits of just doing that are absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. Of just spending some time and maybe you could tell us brain-wise, like I really don't know, why is that so beneficial for us to be using our prefrontal cortex more than just on autopilot? Because let me just read you some of the benefits. Some of the benefits of just noticing new things, right? That's it. That's all. Just notice new things. We become happier. More satisfaction in our relationships, increase in self-esteem. We become less prejudiced. Now this is all just from noticing new things or learning something new. That's why I picked up the banjo again. Learning something new, getting that exercise in that prefrontal cortex, right? Noticing new things, trying new things. Can you speak to that a little bit, Jamie?
Well, it's directed attention, but I think it also goes back to, I don't know if I could talk about this scientifically, but psychologically.
Just make it up. They won't know.
It goes, that's true. It has to do with, I think it has to, for me, it has to do with gratitude.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with breath. Breathing is everything. If you look at yoga and exercise and meditation and relaxation therapy, it all comes back, even hypnotism is all breath, and it's really nothing more than breath, and it's breathing. I tell my patients occasionally that if they want better mental health, they should take up smoking. And they look at me just like you're looking at me now. It's like, are you crazy? But I tell them that they should take up smoking without the cigarette.
Right.
See, the smokers are smart. Number one, they get to take a break every 30 to 45 minutes. But that's very important, taking a break.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And they go outside, which is better. They get to breathe, fresh air. Now, sometimes they breathe bad air, but they're still breathing, and they're breathing in a very peculiar way. They have a prolonged inhalation and an even more prolonged exhalation. So they're breathing slowly.
I was just interrupting because I was reading about when we sleep. When we sleep, we exhale twice as long as we inhale, and that's putting our body in a different state. So you inhale for like a 4 count.
Right, it alters your partial carbon dioxide level, right? You breathe in oxygen, you blow out carbon dioxide. So it alters the partial carbon dioxide level in your blood, which changes your blood pH level, and that induces a state of relaxation. But when smokers are out there smoking and breathing and taking a break, they also don't have anything else to do. So what do? They become aware. They become mindful of everything that's around them. People say smoking relaxes them. Smoking actually does not relax anything. It's an excitatory chemical, nicotine is, but breathing is relaxing, and that's therapeutic. So,
take up smoking.
If you're stressed out, take up smoking. just don't use a cigarette. Use something else. Use a straw.
Yeah.
The other way, real quick, if you want to prevent Alzheimer's disease, take up smoking. Why? Well, because you're going to die of cancer before you get old enough to get Alzheimer's.
All right.
But also, I couldn't pass that up. It also has to do with catechol.
You got to run these jokes by me before you come up here. That wasn't even in our notes anymore.
I'm sorry.
I don't know. Hey, I just briefly, we talked about this. So we know our autonomic nervous system. Think of it as automatic. Autonomic nervous system is this. It's controlling your heart rate, for example. It's controlling your blood pressure. It's controlling these things. Like it's even your breathing, right? Like how many of you go through your day thinking about your breathing? No one does, right? And so what they're learning now in I guess science is that these people that practice these breathing techniques, like these monks, they bring them into a lab and they put whatever on them and they're watching them. They actually control their heartbeat. They can control their heartbeat. They can control their blood pressure. How many like to be able to control your own blood pressure? I need that.
Yeah.
We take medicine for it, right? Yeah. But so, and my point is this. My point is, from my perspective, is that we're created in God's image, I believe. God's given us everything we need. Everything we need. For the Bible says, for life and godliness. Everything we need. Right? Now we can use it for our own purposes, our own selfish purposes. But God says, I've given you everything that you need. And so I think all these things, and you may say, someone may say, well, I think that's not Christian, or that's Eastern mystic, whatever. Listen, if it has a positive effect in the world or in my life, right? These are gifts from God. These are things that we can be also grateful for. Jamie, our time is up. We're going to have the band come up. I don't think you have the last word here. Usually I have the last word. Anything you want to say or anything you want to add to our discussion that we've had so far?
Real quick.
I always say that too.
And I'm going to get
like
real goofy.
11:15.
I'm going to get goofy for a second. But I met Jeff, I don't know.
5-6 months
Five
ago,
or six
so,
months ago.
yeah.
And I met my friend Mac.
And Pete.
And Pete. And now Connie and Michelle and all you good people. And I could not be happier. And Jeff has brought church back into my life. And I thank you for that. Now I'm showing my gratitude.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Well, the band come up. Let's enjoy that last song again. It was awesome.